Hello and welcome back to our second lesson on American imperialism. In this time period, America is beginning to spread its influence across the globe and look for ways to increase its political and economic power. Last time, we learned about the United States' involvement in and eventual annexation of Hawaii, as well as its short-lived open-door policy in China. Today, we will focus in on Cuba, a Spanish territory fighting for independence, which would lead us into war. As you watch, take notes that help you answer the following question. What caused the Spanish-American War, and how did it affect global relations? The Spanish-American War has its roots in Spain's colonial holding of Cuba, a small country off the coast of the United States. But Spain was a world power, and the United States didn't want conflict with them. So what happened? In February 1895, a Cuban revolution began, and the Spanish government and Cuban nationalists fought over Cuba's desire to become an independent nation. At this point, Cuba and Puerto Rico were Spain's only colonial holdings in the Western Hemisphere, and the Cubans were no longer interested in being controlled. To stop this revolution, Spain began relocating Cuban villages to stop rebels from receiving aid. But during this relocation, thousands of civilians died of starvation and disease. Cubans sought the assistance of the United States, and Americans largely sympathized. Cuba's desire for independence from Spain reminded Americans of their own fight for independence in recent history. However, U.S. governmental support wouldn't come so easily. As American support grew, so too did exaggerated news reports of what was going on in Cuba. This is known as yellow journalism. As American support for Cuba grew at home, the United States government, for its part, had to look out for its business interests in Cuba, and it had to weigh the cost and benefit of going to war with the potential impact on business. Spain did a lot of business with the United States, and going to war would almost certainly hurt that. However, there was a lot of potential business to be had in Cuba, and ultimately this played a factor in the decision to support the country. And lastly, Teddy Roosevelt, the Secretary of the Navy at the time, led the Rough Riders, a cavalry of volunteer fighters who would help the United States defeat Spain at other battles. Roosevelt and his Rough Riders argued strongly for the American support of Cuba against Spain. In the U.S., many journalists aimed to get public support for their cause through emotionally charged tactics. Articles and political cartoons depicted Spain as a tyrant, abusive country. Then came the sinking of the USS Maine. Under pressure from much of the American public to support Cubans, President McKinley sent the USS Maine to the Havana harbor in order to pressure Spain. After 3 weeks in the harbor and right before it was scheduled to leave for another mission, the Maine blew up, killing 266 American soldiers. The American press immediately blamed Spain, even though there was no supporting evidence, and between the yellow journalism and already mounting American support, President McKinley was pressured by Congress to act quickly and declare war. For its part, Spain denied the allegations and suggested it must have been a ship malfunction, but it was too late. On April 24, 1898, Spain declared war on the United States, and on April 25th, the U.S. declared war on Spain. Fighting unfolded in three main areas: Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. Rough Riders, who were miners, law officers, and cowboys, were led by Secretary of the Navy Teddy Roosevelt. They were a volunteer cavalry out of Texas that supported the war efforts in Cuba. In addition, the Buffalo Soldiers, an African-American cavalry, were sent in to help. The United States quickly overpowered Spain, and a ceasefire was agreed upon on August 12, 1898, just months after the war began. In the Philippine arena, where the Filipino people also wanted their freedom from Spain, George Dewey and Filipino revolutionaries under the leadership of Emilio Aguinaldo teamed up to take out Spanish control. They easily defeated Spain here as well, and the Philippine Islands were declared independent of Spain. However, the U.S. saw the Philippines as a strategic location for access to Asia, and they turned on the Filipino people to take control of the territory. Ultimately, the Spanish-American War was a success for the United States. The Treaty of Paris in 1898 officially ended the war, and the United States emerged as a world power for the first time. Cuba gained independence from Spain and was an autonomous country. The United States gained possession of the Philippines, Guam, and Puerto Rico. Also to come out of the war were several legal documents. In the Teller Amendment, signed in 1898, the U.S. promised not to annex Cuba, like it did Hawaii, and the U.S. would help Cubans gain independence. In the Platt Amendment in 1900, it limited Cuba's rights in dealing with other country and gave U.S. special privileges. The U.S. could intervene to keep order. And lastly, the Foraker Act in 1900 removed U.S. military troops in Puerto Rico and set up a civil government for Puerto Rico. Now let's take a moment to reflect. What caused the Spanish-American War, and how did it affect global relations?